whenever you speak, and then good morning. So glad to see that people came to our candidates forum, and I want to thank the candidates for coming. I really appreciate that. It makes it so much nicer when everybody's here. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters Board. We had to hustle and get it together, but here we are and got all our bases hit. And we also want to thank the City of Richfield because they are they're very generous in letting us use the council chambers, and this is being recorded. And it will be on YouTube and also on their channel 16 that's on Comcast. It's being live streamed right now on that. And it also will be on, like I said, YouTube. And then if you need a link to it, we will have the link, and so that it can be it can be shared on other platforms. I want to talk first, Donna Drummond, thank her. Donna Drummond is your moderator. She's the one that's going to be asking the questions about that the league has developed, and also the ones that the audience will be submitting. And then we have a time, it's Karen Jenkins, and she has the little signs there. And when you see the triangle, that means you have 15 seconds. Time is running out. And then the stop sign means that it's done. So in true form, the league asks that we state all the rules before the candidate forum starts. So I'm just going to read these verbatim. It is the League of Women Voters Richfield's mission to promote citizen involvement in government and increase public understanding of major public policy issues. We believe that an informed citizenry is the foundation of effective government. The League of Women Voters Richfield does not endorse candidates for public office or political parties. Candidate forums follow an unbiased and impartial format established and published by the League of Women Voters of Minnesota and the League of Women Voters Richfield. All events are free and open to the public. And I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Susan Rosenberg. I am the president of the League of Women Voters Richfield. First of all, this forum is not a debate. Candidates will take turns answering questions. First, those prepared by the League of Women Voters Richfield members, and then written questions from the audience. And we will have members going around within the audience. And if you have a question, we have cards, pens, so that you can ask those, and they will be submitted to the league, and then we will submit them to Donna. This forum is being audio and video recorded, and it is being live streamed on Channel 16, and it will be rebroadcast there, as well as YouTube. So please hold your applause until the end. No applause or outbursts from the audience will be allowed during the forum. The order of speaking has been determined by drawing numbers, and the order answering questions will rotate afterwards, and that's been done. Right, Donna? Okay. Each candidate's introductory remarks will be 2 minutes. League questions and questions from the audience will be answered in 1 minute. Closing remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. These times will be strictly observed. As I had stated before, Karen has the little signs that you'll be looking for. Members of the audience are invited to submit questions on index cards, and they will be distributed and will be read by the moderator. Members of the audience are invited to submit these questions on index cards, and they've been distributed. League of Women Voters Richfield reserves the right to screen questions submitted by the audience. The intention is in good faith to select questions that represent the interest expressed by members of the audience and those who submit questions. Questions will not be asked if they are illegible, on personal matters unrelated to elective positions, unclear, hostile or antagonistic, supportive, gratuitous, or submitted to make a point rather than gaining information. Questions on one issue or similar issues will be consolidated and rephrased. If a listener perceives that an issue has not been adequately addressed, League of Women Voters Richfield urges the listener to contact the candidate directly following the forum. And I ask that the candidates do stick around for just a little while and see if something comes up that they need to be questioned about. There is a table outside the chambers for campaign literature. And if you can go out there and take a look, there's most of the candidates have left information. And we don't allow any campaign signs, clothing, or buttons advocating a specific candidate to be displayed here in the chambers during the forum. Candidates can bring their speaker notes, and there has been paper and pen provided, as well as water to them. And I ask that everybody please turn off their cell phones. And so now I will turn this over to Donna Drummond, and the forum will begin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. We'll start with introductory comments, and we'll start left to right. So we'll start with Mr. Howard.
Thank you. My name is Mike Howard. I'm the state representative running for re-election, and it has been an honor to serve this community the last 4 years in the Minnesota House. First, I wanted to thank the Richfield League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. It feels good to be back in person. We didn't have that opportunity 2 years ago. And I also want to thank Frank, Ryan, and Melissa. I think it's meaningful that we have our full slate of House and Senate candidates here today. This is what democracy looks like, to have that free exchange of ideas. These last 2 years have been challenging for our community, for the whole state, and I have been so impressed and proud of the resilience our community has showed. This is a community that understands we're in this together, and that's the spirit I've taken as our state representative and will take forward in working with you to tackle the big challenges facing our community and state. If we work together, if we lead with our values, I believe we can accomplish big things that improve lives, and that's the reason I'm committed to this work as your state representative. As your representative, I'll fight to take real action on climate change, address racial disparities, and finally tackle gun violence prevention. Too many Minnesotans are feeling the economic squeeze while corporate profits are soaring. That's not just. I'll fight to ease economic burdens and fight back against corporate greed. And perhaps most importantly this year, I will always be a strong vote in support of abortion rights and fighting back against politicians that are seeking to ban abortion here in Minnesota. Make no mistake, this is an issue that's before state legislatures next legislative session. This is a choice that's between you and your doctor, and politicians should have no say in it. That's the kind of state representative I'll be. So I really look forward to this morning and the discussion of ideas, and can't wait to have this discussion.
Thank you. Ms. Wickland?
Thank you. My name is Melissa Halverson Wickland. I am the state senator. I represent Richfield and Bloomington. And I also am really appreciative of the league hosting this event and giving us an opportunity to meet with voters and to have a chance to have our views expressed and available online and afterwards, so that people can hear from us directly. And I'm also glad that all of us are able to be here. I am running for a new Senate district this year. It's been an incredible honor to serve constituents in Richfield and Bloomington over the past 10 years. And I'm seeking a new term in Senate District 51, which includes all of Richfield, part of Bloomington, and then a small part of Minneapolis. And so I'm seeking election to this seat to continue representing constituents in the state Senate. And the three of the key areas that I have been working on and that I would like to continue working on, one is the area of healthcare, access to healthcare and access to affordable healthcare has been an area of work for me over my terms in the Senate. I'm especially proud of the work that I did as an author, along with Representative Howard, on the Alex Smith Insulin Affordability Act, where we created a program that allows people to access an emergency supply of insulin. And over 1,000 Minnesotans have made use of this program since it was put into place in 2020. I've also worked on education, childcare, and community issues, and I hope that we'll get to talk about all of those as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wiskirchen?
Thank you. Hello, my name is Ryan Wiskirchen, and I'm running to be Richfield's representative and advocate in the Minnesota legislature. I've worked in the legislature for 3 years now as a staffer, and during that time, and during college, I interned for U.S. senators and for the State Department as well. Those experiences have helped me to develop a philosophy of what representative government should look like. When people call into our offices looking for help, I don't ask what party or candidate they supported. I just help them as best I can. When COVID struck Minnesota, people were looking for help. Many times when they contacted state agencies and government offices, they were met with voicemail boxes and recordings. Those I spoke to and helped were grateful just to have someone on the other line to hear them and to help them. That's what government should do, and that's what I pledge to do for Richfielders, to always answer the call and to help my constituents no matter what their walk of life may be. I grew up in South Minneapolis, and I'm now raising 2 little boys, Patrick and Leo. I'm running for office because I want them to have as good of a childhood as I had, if not better. But that won't happen if we don't work for it. Rising prices and a sluggish economy are leaving people less able to support themselves and their families. Parents and educators are frustrated with a one-size-fits-all model of education, which leaves them feeling unheard and exhausted, and where their students suffer the most. And crime is making our community less of a community, as neighbors don't go out and meet each other for fear that another local football game will be marred by gun violence. I want to make Richfield the best place in the world to raise a family, and everything I do as your representative will be in service of that vision. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you to the other candidates. I'm glad we can all be here and express our views and educate the audience and help you make the right decision in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pathko?
Thanks the League for inviting us here today and hosting this forum. My name is Frank Pafko. I'm the endorsed Republican candidate for Senate District 51. I'm retired, 69 years old, married with 2 children and 6 grandchildren. I have lived 40 years in Richfield and spent my childhood and part of that in the portion of South Minneapolis, which is in new SD 63. So I've lived in the Senate District for 65 of my 69 years. I went to Winona Grade School, Nokomis Junior High, and graduated from Roosevelt High School. Graduated from the University of Minnesota with a bachelor's degree in fisheries. I spent my first 2 years working for the DNR in Ely on the copper-nickel study. I then spent 34 years with the Minnesota Department of Transportation, starting out as a aquatic biologist and ending my career as Chief Environmental Officer of the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Along the way, I was the first non-engineer named to run a highway project development program as Metro North Area Manager in Anoka, Ramsey, and Northern Hennepin County. Some of the things I'm most proud of from my career was, well, in this color season, if you've ever driven up on the North Shore on Highway 61, I convinced the engineers to build a couple of tunnels instead of some ugly rock cuts. As area manager, I managed the Unweave the Weave, which was the system interchange of 35E and 694. Functionally, the same project as this crosstown 35W interchange project. I was able to deliver that project for about a third the cost of the crosstown project. And when the 35W bridge fell back in 2007, my team was able to deliver the environmental documents in 9 days. Thank you.
Thank you. For the questions that we'll ask, you'll have 1 minute to respond, and we will do a random order for each question, so you're not always following the same person and you're not always in the same spot. For this first question, you may have covered this already in your introductory remarks, but it's a chance to elaborate a little bit. Why are you running for office, and what will be your major priorities if elected? So for this question, we'll start with Mr. Wiskirchen.
I knew it. So I am running for office, as I said, to provide a better world for my children and future generations of other Richfielders as well. Because I grew up in this area, I know how wonderful life can be. I know when I was a kid, we'd go downtown to see shows with my family. I rode the public transportation to high school 3 of my 4 years, going to Minneapolis South on Lake Street, and never felt unsafe. And there's so many things that I took for granted when I was a kid that now that I'm a parent, I worry about whether I'll let my boys have those same experiences for fear that something could happen. Excuse me. And it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have to live that way, and we don't have to. And so I want to tackle crime, I want to tackle education, and I want to tackle the ability of people to support themselves and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Again, the last 2 years have been so challenging for Minnesota families. My top priorities are those that will make a difference on the bottom lines for Minnesota families with tangible results for the folks that have really felt squeezed in an economy that's worked pretty well for those at the very top, but not so well for the folks at the bottom or the middle. And so I think we need to target the biggest budget items that families are facing. That's the cost of child care, that's the cost of health care, and that's the cost of housing. We have a significant historic budget surplus, and what we as legislators should do is target that surplus in ways that will help improve the lives of families that are suffering. That's job number one. The other thing I would say is that the stakes of this election, it's become cliche to say that, there's such a long list that we'll wait for the rest of the forum to get to more items. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Pathko?
I worked 36 years in state government. I thought I did a pretty good job rising to just about the top of the non-political appointees in the department. For the last 16 years, I have seen the operations of state government, mismanagement, malfeasance, and fraud. It wasn't just feeding our future. We've had the Minlars debacle with our driver's licenses, MNsure, Health and Human Services. We have the administration of state government has been wasting hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, and we can do a better job, and I want to be able to do that. My expertise is in natural resources, environment, transportation, and government operations. But I also have priorities in education. We've got to improve the 50-year decline and in lowering taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wicklund?
Thank you. Yes, I'm running again this year because I wish to continue to serve the residents of Richfield and Bloomington and Minneapolis. And I mentioned that I have been working to address the meaningful issues to those in the community, such as healthcare. Another area that I have worked on that I think affects many families in Richfield is to address and create an environment where children are thriving in our community. I would like to address the concerns that families have about childcare, the ability to find it in our communities and be able to afford it. I also feel that providers aren't making a wage to live on, and that's something that needs to be addressed as well. So that's another big area of concern issue that I've been working on, and I would like to continue to work on.
Thank you. This next question is Minnesota has stark racial inequities in income, education, and home ownership. What are your ideas for reducing and eliminating these inequities? For this question, we'll start with Mr. Pafko.
Giving everyone an equal chance at success in reducing inequality and inequities has to start with education. For the last 50 years, our education system has declined dramatically, particularly for people of color. Reading scores were incredibly low, and then COVID hit, and we stopped sending our kids to school and made them look at a computer. And I saw the decline in my grandchildren's ability. Throwing money at the problem has not solved it for 50 years. We need to try something different, and that something different is competition. State dollars for education should follow the student, should be the parents get to decide the best school for those children, and that will start people off with a good, solid education and give them a start on life.
Thank you. Ms. Wicklund?
Thank you. I think that to begin to address the racial inequalities that we see in our city and community and our neighborhoods, I think we need to direct some of our state, funding towards the issues that are affecting our families in our communities. And directly supports communities of color. So, for example, I've already mentioned childcare. I think that parents having access to funding to support their ability to find and afford childcare is a big one way that we can create an opportunity for them to be able to stay in their jobs and be working. Another area is definitely housing. We need to have more supports to create affordable housing opportunities in our communities. And also education is another big issue, and hopefully we'll get to that in another question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
First, we need to bring a racial equity lens to all of our work at the legislature and acknowledge that part of the reason we have deep racial disparities is the systemic racism that's been a part of our systems for generations. In particular, I want to target the kinds of ways that we can have a multiplying and ripple effect to narrow racial disparities, and housing is top of mind for me. As the question indicated, we have the largest racial equity gap in homeownership in the country. That is unacceptable. As vice chair of the Housing Committee, I worked on legislation that would increase first-generation homebuyer grants to create more first-generation homebuyers. And if we can create a system where folks have stable housing and we narrow that equity gap in housing, I believe will also help narrow gaps in opportunity in our schools and our economy. And so housing is where I'd start.
Thank you. Mr. Wiskirchen?
Thank you. For me, I believe that education is the key to uplifting all Minnesotans. Here in Richfield, we have a wonderfully diverse community. And earlier this week, I had the opportunity to tour several of our community schools with Superintendent Unowski. And what I saw there were programs and teachers who are culturally responsive, who melded with the community, who belong to the community. And as a result, we've seen higher levels of participation in advanced placement courses, college in the schools, especially for many of these communities of color, these formerly marginalized groups. And what I see is we have this local model for education that works very well for what Richfield parents, teachers, and students want and need. And when we look at some of the mandates coming down from St. Paul, we're seeing things that are exhausting teachers and driving them from their profession. So local control of schools so they can better reflect the community, I think, is key to addressing a lot of these inequities. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is, which one issue do you think is most important to work on with legislators across the aisle? For this question, we'll start with Ms. Wickland. Do you prefer Halverson Wickland? Is that correct?
No, you can, Ms. Wickland is fine. That's fine.
Okay. So we'll start with Ms. Wickland.
Thank you. It's hard to say that there's one issue that would stand out to me that I need to work across the aisle. I feel that I have done that over my 10 years in the Senate in a full range of issues. If you look at one of the most challenging bills and programs that were developed, as I referred to earlier, the Alex Smith Insulin Affordability Act, that was certainly a bipartisan effort, and it took us multiple sessions to actually work through all of the concerns, the issues that different stakeholders brought to the discussion. But in the end, I think the ability to develop personal relationships and work together on compromise is something that's absolutely necessary, and it crosses all areas in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wiskirchen?
Thank you. I think that it's important to try to work across the aisle on all issues, of course, and that's part of my philosophy. But I think the immediate concern for me would be providing relief for individuals and families suffering from economic hardship. And I see reaching across the aisle and working to reduce regressive taxes that hurt the poor the most, looking at the gas tax, looking at state taxes on federal aid programs that come to Minnesotans. With the budget surplus that we have, there's, I don't believe, any reason to be taxing our poorest, most needy members of society when we're all hurting and when they especially need the help. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pafko?
As area manager, for the North Metro, I ended up working with the most conservative and the most liberal members of both the House and the Senate, was able to work collaboratively with them in solving problems. The single best opportunity for bipartisan support is tax cuts. You had it last session until the governor decided to cancel it. However, we need to get together and help Minnesotans hurting in the economy. Eliminate the Social Security tax on income. I should say the income tax on Social Security. Our lowest income tax level is higher than the highest income tax level in the state of Illinois. We should also lower our lowest tax bracket. That will give money to the people who are hurting in this economy the most. And we can get that done right away. Senate File 1.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
First, I have to say, in an answer about how to work together, Mr. Pafko threw a political shot at the governor that was untrue. But what I would say is we should be working together across the aisle on these big challenges, and I have a track record of doing that in passing the Alex Smith Insulin Affordability Act, several pieces of legislation on housing. I would say the issue that comes to mind specifically that warrants more bipartisan work is in the arena of public safety. I think you've seen that issue politicized to a harmful degree because when you actually talk to Minnesotans at the door, it's about the least political issue that there can be, because everyone, no matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, wants to be safe in their community. So that's an issue where I think it warrants us working together, listening to Minnesotans, and focusing on the things that we know can work to make our communities more safe.
Thank you. The next question is, many are concerned with increased gun violence in our communities. What legislation, if any, would you support to help reverse this current trend and respond to the need for safer communities? For this question, we'll start with Mr. Pafko.
Gun violence is a problem. I was watching a House hearing a few years ago when Mike Freeman, the Hennepin County attorney, said he does not prosecute ineligible people in possession of a gun because it was only a misdemeanor. There were amendments instituted to say, let's make it a felony so it can be that can be prosecuted, so we can get gun criminals off the street. It was not supported by the DFL in the House. Criminals today do not believe there are any consequences for their actions, that they can get away with anything. They can get out on no bail. They get their sentences reduced. We have to make our criminals accountable, and therefore we should up the legislation I would support is to increase the penalties for gun violence, for felons in possession, and get criminals off the streets.
Thank you. Ms. Wickland?
Thank you. Yes, gun violence is something that I think many in our community are thinking about, both because it's happening in our communities and close to home, and it's causing members of our community to feel that they can't partake in activities that they should be able to without feeling care about use of guns in our society. But we absolutely have ways that we can address gun violence, and I have been a supporter of, I'll give two examples of bills that I have been an author of over my time in the Senate. One is to expand the regulation and background checks, and the other is to put in place opportunities for taking guns, removing guns from situations where a person is likely to commit violence.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
It starts by acknowledging that we are not powerless to address the plague of gun violence in our community, in our state. There are a multitude of things we can do, and frankly, it's disappointing that we haven't been able to take more action. The reality is, over the last few years, the Minnesota House has passed several pieces of bills that are supported by the broad majority of Minnesotans to address gun violence, and Republicans have opposed those at every turn. As Senator Wickland mentioned, we can pass close the gun show loophole, ensure background checks. We can pass red flag laws that have proven to reduce gun violence and have been proven to reduce suicides. We can pass safe storage laws and eliminate the accidents that we've heard that have killed people all across our state. And we can be more aggressive in prosecuting ghost guns. There's a host of things we can do to take a holistic approach and do what Minnesotans want. Take action and address gun violence, and do it now.
Thank you. Mr. Wiskirchen?
Thank you. During the public safety bill debate in the House when I was a staffer earlier this year, 2 Minneapolisans were killed during the course of the debate over public safety. And I think that goes to show that we need to be working together closer across the aisle, because those are prices that our community should not be paying. When I look at new legislation, new bills, what I think is that Minnesota actually has very good regulations on who can purchase a firearm, but they're not enforced. And they're not enforced because we're facing, as a state, as a community, a shortage of police officers to enforce those laws. So what I would like to do is expand data sharing across law enforcement units within the state and encourage hiring and retention of officers so that we can enforce the laws that are on the books and keep guns off our streets and out of the hands of criminals to keep our communities safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question. What is your position on environmental sustainability, and what policies, if any, do you plan to support to address climate change? For this question, we will start with Mr. Howard.
With a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old, I want to try to create a future where our kids can enjoy Minnesota's rich tradition of the outdoors like we all did growing up. But the reality is our future is in danger due to climate change. It's a real, clear, present danger, and it demands our action now. I'm the co-author of legislation to put Minnesota on a course for 100% renewable energy by 2050. I think that is the reasonable thing we really do. And just look to our own power companies like Xcel, who's already moving in that direction because it's actually the cheaper thing to do. So we absolutely need to take action. We need to listen to our young people, and we need to address climate change.
Thank you. Mr. Wiskirchen?
Thank you. I'll echo, I also have 2 young children, and one of the things I love about this state is that even this close to an urban center, we still have this beautiful greenery. We have these beautiful lakes. We have a beautiful environment to enjoy, and preserving that for future generations is vitally important. When I look at what's going on in Europe, what I see is that in a rush to divest from a lot of fossil fuels, what countries over there have done is they've become reliant on foreign providers. I think that it's a noble and worthwhile goal, and 2050 I think sounds like a fine benchmark, but I want to make sure that we're not being left hostage to foreign autocracies, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Venezuela, when we look to our energy needs. Minnesota has wonderful resources, intellectual and environmental, that we can use to power our future, and I believe in a step-by-step process to getting us to the green future that we need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pafko?
I'm a biologist. I was Chief Environmental Officer for the Minnesota Department of Transportation and Chief of the Office of Environmental Stewardship. I spent my career trying to build transportation projects in the most environmentally conscientious way possible and leave the environment better than we found it. And I will continue to do that. Climate change, climate's always changing. This spot that we are sitting in today has alternately been the bottom of a tropical sea and buried under a mile of ice. That's normal range of climatic variation, so we have to adapt to it. And the best way for us to be able to adapt to it is to have inexpensive, abundant, and reliable energy so that we can adapt. And the current policies to go renewable, it is expensive, it is not reliable, and it is not abundant. So we need to reform our energy policies so that we can be able to adapt. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wicklund?
Thank you. I think that climate change is something that is extremely urgent that we be doing more to address in the state legislature, and it's been really frustrating and disappointing in the state Senate to find that the Senate Republican majority has been unwilling to hear bills that take aggressive action to address climate change, which we know is already affecting our state, and we need to be looking out for our children's future. Things that I would support doing to protect our environment and to address climate change are, of course, to continue to build a carbon neutral economy, to expand clean transportation options, to advance sustainable agricultural practices. These are all things that we can address in the legislature with programs and funding to different policy solutions.
Thank you. Next question, question 6. What would you do with the budget surplus? For this question, we'll start with Ms. Wicklund.
Well, thank you. The budget surplus is certainly something that has been top of mind all session. And when we entered the 2022 session, I was really hopeful that this would be an opportunity for us to work together to develop a way to utilize the surplus that benefited so many Minnesotans across the state. The approach that I would take would continue to examine what was discussed this session, which was to provide tax relief. This would put money back in Minnesotans' pockets immediately by reducing the tax on Social Security benefits, for example, or increasing the homestead market exclusion rate. I would also spend money from the surplus to support our care economy. That means money going to wages for direct care professionals to help our people with disabilities, as well as others who work with people in Minnesota.
Thank you. Mr. Pathko?
The budget surplus needs to give tax relief to the lowest income Minnesotans. I'm glad we agree on that. Eliminate the income tax on Social Security benefits for our senior citizens. Reduce the rate of taxation on our lowest on the lowest income brackets. That is how you best return the surplus to the people and have them be able to withstand this inflation and bad economy that we're into. In addition, we should have targeted spending, one-time spending that has no tails into future that keeps those taxes high. So we should do, perhaps, given our interest rates, our next bonding bill, maybe we should fund out of the surplus some of those projects directly rather than pay these much higher interest rates on that. Targeted, no tails.
Thank you. Mr. Wiskirchen?
Thank you. I have to echo a lot of what's been said already. Targeted tax relief to help the poorest Minnesotans, those most in need. And it's important to remember this budget surplus is not a permanent fact, and the current amount is not a guaranteed fact. So when we look at the bonding issue, we look at what we can do with this money that's going to pay for itself and help out in the future. And to that extent, we need to look very carefully at tightening up our current aid programs, cutting out fraud so that we can enjoy more funds for ongoing programs which will help Minnesotans. But with our current budget, I believe getting out in front of the increasing interest rates by reducing our bonding issues in the next session would be vital and a good way to make sure that money is preventing the buildup of the deficit in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
We need to ease the squeeze on Minnesota families that are struggling under higher costs, and those are low and middle income Minnesotans. And let's focus our efforts on the biggest items of their budget: the cost of childcare, the cost of housing, the cost of health care. That would be my top priority with the budget surplus. The other thing with this historic opportunity, we should set Minnesota up for success in the future and take action on these big challenges. We should fully fund our schools and provide historic investments in public education. We should build for the first time a mental health care system in Minnesota that frankly doesn't exist. We should address the workforce crisis that is hurting our communities with disabilities. And the last thing I'd say is I'm open to some tax cuts, but we should be very wary of blanket tax cuts proposals that often benefit the rich and the corporate interests. Those folks are doing just fine in the economy. We should be targeted, and we should be very specific about that because we've seen a lot of tax cut proposals that are dressed up to look like middle tax relief that go to the rich.
Thank you. Question 7. Bonding was not passed by the last session, including capital improvements for the Wood Lake Nature Center project. Do you support a bonding bill this session, and do you support the Wood Lake Nature Center project? We will start with Mr. Wiskirchen.
Thank you. The short answer is yes. My family and I live just a few blocks from the Wood Lake Nature Center, and we enjoy it, and I think it's vital, especially this close to the urban core, for our community members to get out in nature and to experience, some of that beauty that is provided. And that's one of the things where government has a role in providing this accessibility and the maintenance of these common amenities, these common goods for our community. Again, as I said in the previous question, what I'd like to see is how much of that bonding we can replace with cash to avoid higher interest rates in the future and make sure that we can maintain the Wood Lake Nature Center for future generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Our Woodlake Nature Center is a treasure for our community in Richfield. And I first want to thank the Richfield leaders of many generations ago that had the foresight to create this refuge in our community. And it's up to this generation now to preserve and protect into the future. I'm proud to be the chief author of legislation to complete funding for the new Woodlake Nature Center. And I'll do one better on the question. I think we ought to still come back this year in a special session to pass a bonding bill. In this environment, it's really disappointing that we weren't able to do so already. This really should be a bipartisan issue, and I would hope that we could come back in a special session this year to pass a bonding bill that'll help our community and help our whole state.
Thank you. Ms. Wicklund?
Thank you. Yes, I'm a chief author of the Senate bill to support the Woodlake Nature Center bonding project, and it is an excellent project. It's been so exciting and interesting to get the information from the Richfield city personnel who have done so much work to prepare this bonding request and have prepared an excellent solution, I think, to the known concerns that they have. The facility there needs work. It is used by school children across Richfield as well as regionally. It has draws people in from all over. I think we should have a bonding bill next session if we don't have the opportunity to pass one in a special session this year. The work was done to prepare for a bonding bill, and it was really disappointing that we weren't able to get that done in the 2022 session.
Thank you. Mr. Pafko?
State bonding is for projects of statewide importance and regional importance. Woodlake is a regional asset and therefore should be supported in the bonding bill. This session is primarily, its highest priority, which must be done, is to pass the biennial state budget. However, there is time, particularly given the work that's been done in previous sessions, for a bonding bill. And yes, I would support working on a bonding bill the first 2 months of the session before all of the reports from the state agencies and the budget projections come in. There is time to do a bonding bill at the beginning of this upcoming session.
Thank you. I also would like to remind the audience that we're taking questions from the audience. So if you have questions you'd like to write on a note card, Nancy is passing those out, Carolyn. We have a couple more questions from the league, and then we'll go to audience questions. For this next question, number 8, as a member of the legislature, what measures, if any, would you support to reinforce or ensure voter confidence in our elections? We will start with Mr. Howard.
This is a really important question. The insurrection that happened on our nation's capital on January 6th isn't just a scar on our democracy, it's an open wound. We have politicians all across this country that are trying to undermine our election system. It's anti-democratic, and we in Minnesota have the best system, I would say, in the country and the highest voter participation in the country. That's something to celebrate. What we ought to be doing is making it easier and expanding the rights and freedoms of Minnesotans to express their voice and to vote. So I'm a supporter of things like automatic voter registration when folks turn 18. I'm also, I want to mention, a supporter of supporting our nonpartisan election officials who have seen untold animosity for doing their job to implement elections. We need legislators that will support our nonpartisan election workers who are doing incredible work to make sure that our democracy is working properly for Minnesotans.
Thank you. Ms. Wicklund?
Thank you. Yes, democracy and protecting our democracy is vital this year as in other years, but this year especially. We have seen the events that have happened in our nation's capital and how there are some among our statewide candidates who are not raising the concerns and being willing to say that they protect our current status as a leader in the country in terms of voting. I would like to see additional access to registration in an automatic way, but I think the more important thing for me is that we protect the strong democratic solution that we have that involves our cities, our counties, and our Secretary of State's office working together to provide open access for qualified Minnesotans to vote.
Thank you. Mr. Pathko?
Voters are losing confidence in the integrity of our election systems, but there is still a basically good system in the state of Minnesota. We've had high voter turnout prior to and since the changes that have occurred in the last number of years. Same-day voter registration is important, but we need to implement a way to ensure that those voters are confirmed as residents. Today, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of same-day voter registrations cannot be confirmed post-election. So I propose that we add either voter ID requirements at the polls or provisional ballots for same-day registrations so that those voters can be confirmed to be eligible voters in their precincts so that they do not cancel out the votes of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wiskirchen?
Thank you. First of all, I'm proud to say I've signed the pledge, can't remember the exact name of it now, but to respect the outcome of this November's election and to work for a greater respect for democracy in our state and in the country if I have the opportunity. I have an international affairs background, so I look at our voting integrity through a partial lens of malicious actors, especially overseas. And what I also look at then overseas is solutions to that problem. And the U.S. is very lucky. We have strong allies in NATO, Australia, Japan, who are thriving, vibrant democracies. And there's a lot we can learn from our partners overseas in how they conduct their elections in a way that establishes the confidence and the security and the participation of their citizens. So I'd like to see a commission study some of those foreign partners and see what we can do in Minnesota as a laboratory of democracy to implement some of those ideas and build confidence in Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 9. Given the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding Roe versus Wade, state legislatures may be enacting new laws regarding women's reproductive health issues, including access to care. What measures, if any, do you think the Minnesota legislature should enact regarding women's reproductive health? For this question, we will start with Ms. Wicklund.
Thank you. This is an incredibly important issue this year and is on the minds of many voters I talk to at the doors this summer and fall. I am absolutely a strong supporter of a women's right to access all forms of reproductive health care, including abortion. And I believe that women and people have the right to bodily autonomy. They are the best ones to make the decisions about their health care. In the Senate, I have been the author of the 2 bills. One is called the PRO Act. It's to protect reproductive options in Minnesota, and that would strengthen what is in place to make sure that women continue to have access to abortion no matter what court decisions are brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pathko?
In the 1990s, the Minnesota Supreme Court ruled that the Minnesota Constitution grants abortion rights to women. So the removal of Roe v. Wade from the U.S. Supreme Court has absolutely no bearing on the state of Minnesota. A Ramsey County judge recently voided all of the other restrictions on abortion in the state of Minnesota that has yet to go through all of the appeals. So the legislature right now cannot add any other restrictions to the right of abortion. That's unfortunate. I mourn for the hundreds of thousands of millions of babies that have been aborted in the state of Minnesota. But right now, unless the people of Minnesota, through constitutional amendment, change our Constitution, the right of abortion the right to be able to suck the brains out of your baby minutes before it is born is enshrined by the Minnesota Supreme Court.
Thank you. Mr. Wiskerchin?
Thank you. Would it be possible for me to get another bottle of water by chance? Oh, thank you.
You need the bottle.
Sorry, when I get nervous, I drink water. To answer the question, I am personally pro-life. That's a big part of my Catholic faith. But as a legislator, I would be supporting the Minnesota State Constitution, which, as Mr. Pafko has said, enshrines the right of abortion. And the only way that would be changed is through a court decision or through a statewide amendment voted on by the people of Minnesota. And I trust the people of Minnesota to make the choice that reflects their values and their state. What I would support in the legislature is ways to provide information about options for those undergoing this difficult and trying decision. I'm the child of a single mother, and I'm a child of a single mother who had the choice to abort me, and I'm glad that she didn't, and I think that that's part of the debate over choice is what to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
First off, as your state representative, I will always vote to protect your abortion rights, and I'll vote to put that in state statute, full stop. But I will say what gets me a little hot under the collar is hearing Republicans say that abortion's not on the ballot. And I have to call the question, how gullible do you think Minnesotans are? Let's be clear. For decades, a defining pillar of the Republican Party has been to restrict abortion access. They've demonized Planned Parenthood. Their state party platform calls for overturning the state Supreme Court case that was just referenced. Their candidate for governor has repeatedly said he wants to ban abortion, and every single year, Republicans introduce bills to ban abortion. And so, Minnesotans, when you hear a Republican say abortion is not on the ballot, don't trust what they say. Follow what they've done for 50 years in systematically trying to take away what is your right, not theirs.
Thank you. We'll now go to questions from the audience. The first one. Currently, there is an extreme staffing shortage, which is most impacting seniors and people with disabilities. This has led to people being left in their homes, unable to get out of bed, group home closures, and young people being moved to nursing homes. If elected, how will you address this in the next legislative session? For this question, we'll start with Mr. Wiskerchin.
Thank you. I've had the opportunity to meet with some of our homes in the community and their staff and hear about these shortages firsthand. And one idea that we've been discussing with them in our campaign has been how to widen the pipeline of students and young people going into this profession. And I think, speaking as a millennial, there's a lot of trepidation and fear when it comes to taking care of sick people, older people, people with disabilities, and things that we can pilot in high schools and even for college credit and towards licensure requirements would help expose young people to this as a career path and as a way forward. And I would like to introduce legislation that would make that an option for schools so that we can address these shortages, not just today or tomorrow, but for years and years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
This is a crisis that the legislature absolutely should address and use a significant share of the budget surplus to raise wages for our PCAs that provide amazing care for our people with disabilities. My first job out of college was a PCA for two kids, young kids with autism. It was some of the most challenging, rewarding work I've ever done in my whole life. And it is just abysmal that you can basically work at a McDonald's and earn about what you would as a PCA here in Minnesota. The key thing we need to do to address this workforce shortage is to raise wages. And there isn't really a market solution to this. This is a market failure, and it requires the legislature to make this a priority. If we care about our people with disabilities, we need to put up, and that means making investments that will raise wages to help create a workforce to care for our people with disabilities.
Thank you. Ms. Wicklund?
Thank you. This is absolutely a vital issue that the legislature should have addressed this session with the opportunity presented by the surplus. Until we acknowledge that people are able to find work in jobs that are easier, that pay more, then they will find, if they work in doing this meaningful, extremely important work for caring for people, we are going to have limits on who is willing to go into this field. Wages absolutely have to be increased, and benefits to direct support professionals who work in this field. We cannot expect people to do this type of work and face their own personal struggle to survive, just to care for others. So it's absolutely something that we need to work on in the legislature.
Thank you. Mr. Pafko?
I watched my father, and I was with him for 7 years as he went through assisted living and memory care. So I know the hard work that personal care attendants and nursing staff do with our elderly. Government needs to stop incentivizing people not to work. We need to, I agree with Ryan, I think working with our education systems, our high school students, making work study, allowing them credit and time to work to make this a valuable profession. And yes, there needs to be compensation commensurate with what they are doing.
Thank you. The next question is, Minnesota partially legalized THC products in 2021, creating ambiguity for cities and residents. Would you support broader legalization of THC products? Should Minnesota be growing hemp? For this question, we'll start with Mr. Pafko.
I believe the legislature was not fully aware of the consequences of their action when they partially reduced the THC requirements, and that is why there is confusion and problems at local government with their sales. I have always been in favor of medical marijuana use because it has definite therapeutic value. I have always thought that recreational marijuana use should not be allowed until the federal regulations are changed. And right now, there is a felony trap for anyone who wants to purchase a gun. You have to swear under penalty of law that you are not a marijuana user. And so by liberalizing, we make a problem. So we need to tackle this first at the federal level, and then we can talk about legalizing at the state level.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Yes, I do support the legalization, and I'd take a step further and believe we need to fully legalize substances that have THC and fully regulate it and kind of step into this century and create this legalization that I think Minnesotans are asking for. I would say that the partial legalization just kind of highlights the absurdity of our current system. A substance that is chemically identical to one that is illegal. And last I checked, society hasn't collapsed upon itself in the last few months with these THC products legalized. We ought to legalize cannabis, regulate it, and we should also engage in the criminal justice reform to repair some of the harm that our unjust drug laws have caused over many generations. Thank
you. Mr. Wiskirchen?
Thank you. I'm opposed to legalization of recreational THC, marijuana, other drugs, for reasons that I believe they're regressive. I believe that these substances, which cause placidity, loss of interest, psychosis, and other side effects, hurt our poorest members of society and cause homelessness, unemployment, and other issues that they pay the price for. And in a globalized economy where we're facing our lunch being eaten by Chinese students, by other competitors around the globe, opening the door for our young people, encouraging them to engage in activities which will reduce their lifetime outcomes doesn't seem to me to be the compassionate or the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wicklund?
Thank you. Yes, I support full legalization and regulation of THC products, and I think that the work that was done this year points out the deficiencies in the way our current Senate Republican majority has handled this issue. Instead of having hearings where we can get testimony from all of the different stakeholders that would be affected, the Senate Republican Health and Human Services chair chose not to hear the bill that ended up being passed in an omnibus bill late in the session. So we, on the HHS committee, did not have a chance to fully hear comments from experts and others. And I think that is not the way to move forward with legislation. We can do this. The House has already had full hearings on legalization, and we need to proceed with that work in the Senate.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, explain why or why not you would support legislation requiring nonprofit groups to disclose how much they spent and who donated the money for elections communications. For this question, we'll start with Mr. Wiskirchen.
Thank you. I think that a lot of times nonprofits, non-governmental organizations can be a smokescreen for the super wealthy to exert their will without a lot of the oversight that comes from registered political parties or other venues for getting voice out. Minnesotans, Richfielders, members of our community, our neighbors deserve to have their voices heard, not to have dark money flowing into the state from outside actors with their own agendas, many of whom don't have to live with the consequences of the policies that they advocate. To me, it's common sense that the person closest to the issue should have the greatest say because they have the greatest investment. And increasing transparency, well, as they say, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and more information on that would be appreciated by all Minnesotans, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
I agree with Ryan that we should have, especially with reflect to our elections, more transparency in terms of where the money's coming from. When folks are seeing mail show up on their doors, or you're seeing a television ad, there's a piece of legislation dealing with express advocacy that would do this and try to shine some light on some of the quote-unquote nonpartisan organizations like the NRA or like an extreme abortion group, MCCL. Those groups have opposed that sunshine in the past. We should have it. People should know who's spending money to try to influence your vote. I think it's a good idea, and glad that it should be something that shouldn't be partisan. We should be able to work together because transparency is something we all should be able to get behind.
Thank you. Mr. Pathpo?
We have two problems with this issue. One, we should have donations and our political activism transparent so we see what it is. But we are often too finding that when people are found out that they donate to a cause which is not popular at the time, that those people face consequences. They lose their jobs. So if we need to have transparency, but we also need to have penalties on those who would punish people for their activism and their political donations. So that if someone donates to MCCL and loses their job, they have a course of action to get damages from the person who fired them. So we need to have both in order to be more transparent and encourage activism and involvement in the political process.
Thank you. Ms. Wicklund?
Thank you. Yes, I think that in a general way, I think that we need a lot more transparency in who is donating to candidates or to campaigns that are trying to influence our elections. I think that Minnesotans have the right to know who is behind some of the campaigns, and right now it's very difficult to tell. There's significant amount of money being spent on advertising, and people in Minnesota don't have a fair opportunity to understand who is putting their significant dollar amounts towards these campaigns. So I would be supportive of creating better ways for transparency, and I hope that we can do something at the state level, despite what may not be happening at the federal level. Thank you.
Thank you. We're approaching the end of our time, so we'll go to closing statements. And unfortunately, we have additional questions from the audience. I would encourage people to meet the candidates outside afterwards and ask those questions if you need more information. For closing statements, you will have 2 minutes, and we will start with Mr. Pafko.
State government has been the administration of state government has been under control of the DFL party for the last 12 years. And where are we? We have mismanaged programs that have wasted millions, if not millions, of dollars. MNLARS, Feeding Our Future, Health and Human Services. Inflation is skyrocketing. Our own residents are having trouble buying food and energy to heat and cool their homes and to provide their transportation. Violent crime is up, and it's moving. It's here in Richfield and in Bloomington. Public education has been declining for the 50 years plus that I've been out of high school, and it is just getting worse. We have, and worse particularly for students of color. We have to change the way we are doing things. So if you want to be taxed more so that state government continues to waste millions and millions of your tax dollars, if you want to pay more of your income for the basics of life, food and transportation, energy, if you want crime to overflow the city into our suburbs and put our lives and property in danger, if you want our public school system to fail in educating your children and your grandchildren, you can continue to vote for the people that we have now in power. But if you want to begin to solve these problems, maybe it's time to vote for GOP candidates that will begin to solve these problems in some of the ways that we have discussed today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. Ms. Wicklund?
Well, thank you. And thank you again to the League of Women Voters for holding this forum today, for giving us a chance to talk about some of the issues that are on voters' minds. We certainly didn't get to every topic that voters have talked to me about. Then I'd certainly welcome the opportunity to talk to any of you about issues you care about, and do that today or through, I have a website, wicklandforsenate.com, which has a contact button on it, and you can get in touch with me. I guess a couple of points I wanted to make about specific topics that did come up today. In terms of women's rights to access abortion, the legislature absolutely is poised, if we are under the control of the Republicans, to be influenced and to pass legislation that will affect women's ability to access abortion in Minnesota. The Senate Republicans offered bills, had hearings on bills that would have made it difficult or impossible for providers to provide the care that they need to for women. And I'm sure that is distinctly possible for them to move forward with that if they have majorities in the Senate and House. Second, I think our elections are secure. I think our current status with utilizing the ability to mail or vote early, to access same-day registration, I think it is secure and it has integrity. Also, a couple of topics that we didn't explore very much today. Education, I fully support funding our public schools better than we have been. We haven't been doing it successfully to the level that they need, and I think that is an area that we need to address in the legislature. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
I want to begin by thanking the League of Women Voters and for all the candidates for what I think was a really respectful exchange of ideas and providing a value to the voters of Richfield, those in attendance and those watching, about what we would do in these positions. And as we finish this forum, what I want to highlight is that right as we sit here today, our Richfield High School football team is having their first home game since the traumatic gun violence they experienced a few weeks ago. And the stadium's full. A community has rallied around the support of our students. Our teachers raised money to put on a homecoming dance. It's just been so impressive to see this outpouring of support. And it's that kind of sense of togetherness that our community feels that makes me so honored to represent our community in the House and so eager to continue working with our community to take action on the issues so important to our future. It's become kind of cliche to say this election is the most important one of our lifetime, but my goodness, it is important for Minnesota voters to come out and vote. The stakes couldn't be higher. Abortion is on the ballot. Your rights, your freedoms, our democracy is on the ballot. Whether we're going to build our economy from the middle out or the top down is on the ballot. And I believe that we have the power together to take action on these issues and to build a brighter future for our community and our state. I commit to you, if you give me the trust to represent you for another 2 years, to work in partnership, to be in this work with you together, because we are stronger together. I'm all in for all of us, and I cannot wait for the work ahead for us to build a brighter future here in Richfield and across the state.
Thank you. Mr. Wiskirchen?
Thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. And thank you to our moderator for pronouncing my last name correctly every time. I know that's a bit of a challenge for some people. And thank you to the other candidates for being here and giving our voters a vision and a choice. The reason why I decided to run was because last year we had a school board election and there were 3 candidates running for 3 open spots. And I complained to my wife about that. I said, what's the point of having an election? And she said, if it bugs you so much, why don't you run for something? And she should have watched what she said. But I want to say, above all, I'm running to represent Richfield. And a lot of times our politics become so nationalized, so much of it seems dependent on who's the presidential nominee, what's going on in the U.S. Senate, and we lose sight of who our local representatives are. And sometimes representatives lose sight of who their actual constituents are. It's not the talking heads on news programs or podcasts, it's the people who voted for them. So I'm running to be a Richfield Republican. I'm running to be your advocate in St. Paul because I love Richfield. My wife and I have lived here for 2 years now. We're raising our family here, and it's been wonderful to see the community come out and to see all of the things, especially now that COVID isn't keeping as many people indoors, to see that community blossom and to be welcomed by that community. I can't remember the exact quote, but Ralph Nader in 1972 said, if you resign yourself to being part of the silent majority, you are resigning yourself to receding from public life forever. So thank you for not being part of the silent majority. Thank you for being part of the people who stand up and take an interest and voice their opinions so that we can represent you best. Thank you, and my website is ryanformn.com. Have to get that in. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Let's thank the candidates.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters in Richfield, I want to thank the candidates. We really appreciate such a good attendance. Really appreciate having our public come and the viewers that are watching this and will be watching this on YouTube. And I just want to say, Mr. Wishington, that your wife is pretty smart when she talks about elections, because we just celebrated a couple years ago 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. And because of the pandemic, the League of Women Voters were not able to be the grand marshals of the Richfield Parade ever. And so we have our own little celebration and thankfulness for having that perfect right, that privilege to vote. And this is the way that the League can educate our voters so that they know what they're voting for, who they're voting for, and the stands that they take. So again, thank you. Thank you for attending. I do want to say now we're going to take a little break. In about 15 minutes, we have to kind of regroup here. We will have our local candidates. That's going to be some interesting topics of conversation. If you have a question, please start thinking about questions for our local candidates, and we'll start taking the cards. But anyway, again, thank you, and please stick around for a little bit. I think you probably have some people that didn't get their question answered publicly, but maybe they'll have some time with them personally. Anyway, thanks again so much for coming.
You just testing 1, 2, 3.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay, would everybody please be seated so we can move forward with our local candidates in the forum? Great. All right, well, we're going to get started, and unfortunately, I do have to read the rules again. So, anyway, I just want to welcome everyone again for coming, and I welcome our candidate. I really thank you for all three of you coming. It really means a lot, and we certainly appreciate it on behalf of Richfield League of Women Voters. My name is Susan Rosenberg. I am the president of the Richfield League of Women Voters, and like I said, I want to thank the board for all the work that they've done here. We also want to thank the City of Richfield for allowing us to come into the chambers. And also, we have a person who's taping all of this whole procedure. It is right now live streaming on YouTube as well as Channel 16, which is the Comcast local station. But it is going to be rebroadcast, and we will have a link so that it will be, so that people can have access to it through Facebook and through YouTube. So anyway, again, appreciate it. Donna Drummond is our monitor. She's the one who's going to be asking all the questions. And then we have a timekeeper, Karen Jenkins. She has, and I think she's already talked to you a little bit about the signs that she has. And at 15 seconds, she's going to put up the yellow caution sign. And then at the end, she'll have the stop sign. So I do need to read these because we're an official second forum. It is the League of Women Voters' mission to promote citizen involvement in government and increase public understanding of major policy issues. We believe that an informed citizenry is the foundation of effective government. The League of Women Voters Richfield does not endorse candidates for public office or political parties. Candidate forums follow an unbiased and impartial format established and published by the League of Women Voters Minnesota and the League of Women Voters Richfield. All events are free and open to the public. This forum is not a debate. Candidates will take turns answering questions. First, those prepared by the League of Women Voters Richfield members, and then the written questions from the audience. And I just want to say that if you have questions, just put your hand up. We do have a couple of members who are around that are distributing cards as well as picking them up, and then they will be asked at the end of our forum. This forum, again, is being recorded, and it'll be rebroadcast on Channel 16 throughout the next rest of the political season, as well as YouTube. The order of speaking has been determined. I understand, Donna, you drew names or drew numbers so you know what position you are, and I can see you're up there that way. Each candidate's introductory remarks will be 2 minutes. The league questions and the audience questions will be limited to 1 minute. Closing remarks are limited to 2 minutes. These times will be strictly observed. One of the members has a timer, and she will be holding up the signs, as we said previously. Members of the audience are invited to submit questions on index cards distributed by League of Women Voters members. The questions should be brief. League of Women Voters Richfield reserves the right to screen questions submitted by the audience. The intention is in good faith to select questions that represent the interest expressed by members of the audience and those who submit questions. Questions will not be asked if they are eligible or on personal matters unrelated to the elective positions, unclear, hostile, or antagonistic, supportive, gratuitous, or submitted to make a point rather than gaining information. Questions on one issue or similar issues will be consolidated and rephrased. If a listener perceives that an issue has not been adequately addressed, the League of Women Voters Richfield urges the listener to contact the candidate directly following the forum. So there will be some time after the forum that you will be able to do that. There's no campaign signs, clothing, or buttons advocating a specific candidate allowed in the chambers during the forum. Candidates may bring speaker notes to remind them of any key points, but we have provided pen and a tablet of paper so you can write down notes as your questions are being asked. And there has also been bottled water. And then we do ask that all cell phones be turned off. So with that, I will turn it over now to Donna Drummond. She is the monitor, and she will be asking the questions. Thanks again.
Hey, thank you, Susan. Again, you'll have 2 minutes for your introductory comments, and we'll just go from left to right to start with this. Ms. Supple?
Thank you. My name is Mary Supple, and I'm a candidate for Richfield Mayor. Thank you all for being here, and to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I am so excited for the future of Richfield. I was a teacher in Richfield for 33 years and have deep roots in this community. Sixth graders inspired me year after year with their optimism for the future. That's why I'm excited to work with you all to dream of and to build that future. 50 plus years ago, people planned ahead and used resources for things like Wood Lake Nature Center, quality infrastructure, planting trees, and building recreation facilities like our municipal swimming pool. Now it's our turn to plan for future generations. How will we work together so that everyone in Richfield can thrive for generations to come? In my time on the council, we worked together to increase affordable and accessible housing, passed a prevailing wage ordinance, supported public art, embedded a social worker in public safety department, and implemented organized trash hauling and curbside organics collection. But there is more to do. We need to keep equity, quality, and sustainability in mind as we work on fostering economic development that is inclusive, supporting small businesses, protecting our urban forests and our green spaces, and planning for our future. I am so excited to work with you as we envision our community's future and hope to earn your support to be Richfield's next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
Good morning. Thank you, League of Women Voters, again also for having us there on a cold Saturday morning. I appreciate the chance to be running for city council as the at-large candidate. And my vision also is very similar to Mary's, is that I've been connected with this community for about over 45 years. My in-laws had a house near the STEM school over there, and this is the house that I'm now occupying right now. Through the process of elimination, they both passed away, they all passed away, and my husband received it, and then we took a lot of time to clean up the house. And in that neighborhood, there was a lot of places that have older people living in them, neighborhoods. We have a very tight community in that neighborhood. We watch out for each other. We moved in last August, and unfortunately my husband passed away a month later, but the neighbors really rallied around us. They brought us food and flowers and did snow plowing and things like that. And it was really a joy to be there because I see Richfield as a community of neighborhoods. And that is one thing that we really need to do, is to foster new families coming in. The demographics show that Richfield does have a lot of older population. Many of these people have been here 50, 60, 70 years even, some of them. And this is the type of things that we really need to encourage younger families to come into. We need affordable housing, if you could call it kind of affordable nowadays with the structure of the economy. But not just affordable housing, but the type of housing that houses 3 and 4 and 5 people. And, things like community building events and the historic preservation of our community and rising crime. And because we are a first-ring suburb, that we need to look into all those different things. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dent Bradley?
Yes, thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this forum and for having us today. Hello, everyone. I am Husnia Dent Bradley, and I'm running to become your next Richfield City Council member at large. I am a lawyer, advocate, community organizer, and leader, always looking for ways to grow and develop my connection to the entire community of Richfield to reach better opportunities in the future. I care deeply about a lot of topics and life experiences, including healthcare, education, transportation, immigration, employment, equality, community growth, and artistic expression. I started off in politics, just working on different campaigns, and then helped in Richfield in a number of ways throughout the years with the community. My parents have lived in Richfield for at least over 30 years, and I've lived in Richfield for over 20 years. I want to help come up with equitable outcomes on important decisions when it comes to all of the areas that I mentioned, including education, transportation, and the environment, as it applies to all communities within Richfield. Through my work and involvement in the community, I have worked with all walks of life to negotiate and compromise on issues important to everyone, including the work that I've done with the Richfield Transportation, Richfield Foundation, and also with the Richfield League of Women Voters. I have helped facilitate conversations about present and future transportation projects going on in Richfield and around the Twin Cities, and have seen the progression of different projects that we have been involved in Richfield. I will help Richfield in promoting the social and economic justice and listen to the issues that impact the community, and that's why today I ask for your vote. Thanks.
Thank you. This first question, you may have covered some of this already in your introductory remarks, but it's a chance to elaborate a little bit. Why are you running for office, and what are your qualifications, and what will be your major priorities if elected? For our questions, we will do a random order for each question, so nobody's always going first or last or following the same person. So for this question, we will start with Ms. Dent Bradley.
Yes. For my qualifications, I went to Spelman College and graduated with a chemistry degree, worked for a little while as a chemist, and then also pursued my Juris Doctorate. And I have a Juris Doctorate from William Mitchell College of Law. And I've been, I guess, involved with different legal issues and different things going on, like even voter protection. And I've worked actually on different campaigns, and with working on the campaigns, I've worked in the community and have become more involved and have heard issues that different people are having, and then also helped to facilitate some of those issues with the city. So I believe, like with my skills, experience, and background, that I'm well prepared to become the next city council member.
Thank you. Ms. Supple?
Thank you. As I said, I have deep roots in Richfield, and I want to see it thrive. Another thing that is important to me is public service. It's a value that I grew up with, as both my parents volunteered in local government, and so I think it's important to be involved. Along with teaching for 33 years, I was involved as a local union leader and was the president of the local and worked with contract negotiations, so I understand how some of those internal systems work. I also was on the statewide teacher pension board, so I understand how budgets work and how organizations work. Now, in my opening, I already mentioned a lot of my policy priorities, so I want to focus a little bit on some of our internal structure of the city. We've worked hard to look at systems for equity, sustainability, and quality, and it's important that we do that. We've been through a lot of stressful situations, and so I think we need to keep looking and being proactive instead of reactive.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
Yes, I also have deep roots in Richfield, although I did grow up on the east side of St. Paul in a very normal, middle-class, working family. In my adulthood, I've been involved in union activities also. I'm in the executive board of our local and as a treasurer, and I'm also, with that experience, I've got knowledge of budgets and things like that, and also contract negotiations. I also have been a past guardian ad litem in Hennepin County, working with kids in juvenile court, and raising our children and my grandson that we've been involved with the schools, the sports, the scouts, everything that families get together and do. So I feel that I would be a good candidate for that, for helping younger families and ones with teenagers, working with them. So,
Thank you. The next question, Minnesota has stark racial inequities in income, education, and home ownership. What are your ideas for reducing and eliminating these inequities? For this question, we'll start with Ms. Dent Bradley.
Yes, with the racial inequities, I know that a lot of it stems from even economic, kind of like economic development and economic opportunities. And a lot of the projects that Richfield has been currently working on has been trying to help in that department when it comes to sending out information about community activities around if there's help with housing, funds that are available for people that need help with housing and other things. And I think that helps with families to be able to mobilize a little bit more and get opportunities that are either within Richfield or in the surrounding areas, and that helps with the inequities also. So it's definitely getting more information into people's hands to let them know about home ownership and home ownership programs to increase the amount of people that are owning homes and things like that.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
yes, when Richfield first started, way back when, and even when my in-laws came in, it was a lot of people wanted to move here because they were close to Minneapolis. They were close to different things that are going on in the cities that they were involved in. Richfield obviously is a first ring suburb, and that means everybody needs to be able to be here if they want to be. There is no right or wrong person here in Richfield. Everybody is welcome, no matter what your gender is, no matter what your ethnic background is, no matter if you have a job or you have a work in corporate offices or whatever your position is, you should be able to come into this city and be able to live. I would like Richfield to be a first-ring suburb that you go to and not through. I'd like to see Richfield as a suburb that you go to and stay.
Thank you. Ms. Supple?
Thank you. I believe we need to examine all of our institutions and systems with a focus on equity. Addressing racial disparities and increasing equity makes us all stronger. We need to be open to honest conversations about issues and systems that need to be fixed. All members of our community need to have a voice at the table and be part of the decision-making process. One of those areas that we've been working on is in the area of housing, because there's a huge racial disparity gap in the rates of home ownership in Richfield. And so one of the programs we put in place to address that is the first-time home buyer loans. And I'm proud to say that over 90% of the loans went to people of color in this last round of loan distributions. Another area we need to look at is public safety. And so we applied through the Department of Justice for a disparity grant, and the results of that will be released to the community in mid-November, so watch for that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question. There are many teens experiencing homelessness in our community. How and what can the city do to help these teens? For this question, we'll start with Ms. Supple.
Thank you. One of the things that we need to do as a city is work in partnership with the school district, because the school district, that's where the teens are. And so we need to work together with them. We also have a lot of county services that we can take advantage of. We are looking at things like housing, and this is not directly teens, but I know the Beacon proposal that's coming up is for youth that would be helpful so that they could find housing in those ways as well. I think the fact that we have the embedded social workers help, and we're adding another one with our ARPA funds, but I think this is an issue that needs to have every resident of the community, the schools, the city, and the county all working together to try and solve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dent Bradley?
Yes, thank you. I definitely agree with Mary's proposal. I think definitely some of the team homelessness that we've experienced, at least within the last 10 years, has come from some of the developers moving in and increasing the rent for their parents, and they move out and they can't afford to have their teens living with them anymore. And so definitely continuing to work on affordable housing within the city as new developments come in, making sure that there's a percentage of the development that's equitable and goes to affordable housing. And then increasing in services, but tapping into the state on some of the services that they have for teens, and also having more opportunities for safe spaces for mental health of teens. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
Yes, the services are good, that the city needs to provide. And also, working with the schools, working with social workers, working with mental health professionals. Teens today have a lot of different challenges than when we were teens. And they have a lot more issues going on with the housing and family dynamics, et cetera. I've also talked to a number of people that said that, why isn't there a place for kids to hang out in the evenings, in the weekends, when they're not in school? I think the city needs to work on locations where they could possibly have a teen center of some sort. They need to have more services available that can be there at that teen center. And then in that way, it will kind of coexist with everything else that they're involved in. Mentoring programs, different types of services, just somewhere that they can just hang out and be kids, so they're not so pressured into being adults at such an early age.
Thank you. The next question, what is your position on environmental sustainability, and what do you see as the city's role in addressing climate change? For this question, we'll start with Ms. Dent Bradley.
Yes, I know that we, currently have a, 2040 plan and things like that, and then the federal government has passed a lot of initiatives on carbon-free environments and things like that. I definitely know that in the future, there's going to be more developments, more opportunities to have kind of cleaner, either cleaner fuel or cleaner things that will help with the environment, and the city definitely needs to keep up with that, not only within the building and making sure that they're using alternatives to electricity and other things like that, but making sure that the city is ready for new developments in the environmental law fight. And so I definitely agree with the city adapting to environmental sustainability going forward, because that's the future of our country.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
Yes, the areas in Richfield that we do have the parks and trails and the different programs are sustained very well at this point. However, because of that 2040 plan, the sustainability needs to keep up. And also, it's going to take not just the city, it's not just a city issue. It's individual issues. It's working with the city, working with small and large businesses to come up with different ways with collectively everyone involved in order to have responsibility for it, because this is the city that we live in, and it is always up to us to contribute, to make contributions towards this in some ways.
Thank you. Ms. Supple?
So at the moment, the city is in the early stages of implementing a climate action plan, and there are many, many great suggestions there. We also have the Sustainability Commission, but some of the things we're looking at are, like, as we're addressing the emerald ash borer situation to try and put the urban canopy back in place, we're trying to plant a diversity of species, so if other disease goes through, we don't lose all the trees again. There are things like the organics collection curbside, so that we keep a lot of things out of the landfill. We are trying to encourage charging stations for electric vehicles, building efficiency, renewable energy. There's a very committed group of people that are into alternative lawns and helping pollinators. So there's a lot going out there, and so we just need to work and focus and prioritize that, because it does make a huge difference on the future of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, when considering redevelopment and revitalization in the city, such as the hub, how should the city take advantage of existing opportunities and promote and explore new opportunities? For this question, we'll start with Ms. Supple.
As I mentioned, we have been working very hard on housing and affordability and accessibility, and I want to turn more of our attention to the economic development, because people need living wage jobs. We need to promote small businesses in the economy. And when we're looking at the hub, one of the things I hear over and over again is, like, we need a grocery store. And so we need to look at that. We need to look at, as we are redeveloping that area, we don't want to lose all our vibrant small businesses, because the unfortunate side effect of sometimes redeveloping is that the new commercial space is so expensive that our local small businesses can't afford it. And so we need to make sure we don't have unintended consequences. There's a lot of great ideas out in the community, everything from global markets to entrepreneurial incubators to maker spaces. And so there's a lot of stuff we can look at, but we need to always be thinking and pull everyone into the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dent Bradley?
Yes, I definitely think for taking advantage of the hub and other properties and then new opportunities, we need to pull everyone into the conversation and see if there's even some, because I know there's federal funding for different housing options and things like that. So as the owners of the hub thinking about redeveloping it, maybe tapping into some of those dollars if they want to. Like I know that they need to redo the roofs and the layout of the hub, but seeing if there's any funding that can help with that, that would increase some of the employment opportunities for those in Richfield. And I agree, we definitely need different additional people moving into there that's sustainable. So an equitable approach to having different types of businesses throughout the city that could help sustain the future of the city.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
Sorry. Yes, along with the development of these, the economic growth in the city, we also need looking at not just affordable housing, but type of housing that fits families, individuals that are running these small businesses, families that are running these small businesses. It's nice to have big buildings with condos and 1 and 2 bedroom apartments and, you know, things like that. That's great. But we also need to have types of housing that can fit 3 and 4 and 5 people in a family, that they may want to live here along with working here, and they're running small businesses and they're doing their thing in the city economically. Working with developers that will provide those types of things, working with the land that we have available for those types of things, with the small businesses, and getting citizens involved, getting older citizens involved, just a lot of different demographics from younger families to older ones. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question. Many are concerned with increased gun violence in our communities. What can the City Council do to help reverse this current trend and respond to the need for safer communities? For this question, we'll start with Ms. Christensen.
Yes, thank you. I'll use my neighborhood as an example. When we first moved in, we were just our small block area that many of us, the majority of the people, are on social media. They're on Facebook. We have a Facebook group for our street, and we keep track of everybody. Not being really nosy or intrusive with everybody's business, but if there's strange cars on the street, if there's people walking down the street, or if there's somebody coming door to door that we don't feel should probably be there, we send messages to each other. We need to have more neighbors involved, more neighborhood watch groups. You see signs saying that, this neighborhood is protected by a neighborhood watch group, but are they really? I mean, you need to walk your neighborhoods, you need to drive through your neighborhoods, you need to be aware of what's going on. So getting everyone involved, not just the city and the police, but it's up to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Supple?
Could you repeat the question one more time? Thank you.
Sure. Many are concerned with increased gun violence in our communities. What can the City Council do to help reverse this current trend and respond to the need for safer communities?
So I'm going to look at it from 2 different aspects. One is coming from my experience as a teacher, is we need to be proactive and we need to provide hope for our youth. And I know I've heard Mayor Melvin Carter in St. Paul talk about that as well, that if you have hope and a dream and something you're looking into, you're less likely to get into any kind of trouble because you've got something that you can look forward to. And so we need to work together and focus on providing those opportunities and space for our youth so that they have something to look forward to. Secondly, I would say we have to work on communication between the city and the school district so we're working together so we can support each other. And thirdly, I think we need to do a good job of supporting our first responders and our public safety to make sure that the laws that we do have are enforced and that we keep guns out of the hands of children. We do not need to have kids that are shooting at each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dent Bradley?
Yes, I think we also need to have some programs. So, like some communities have a gun turn-in day. You know, like where the public safety department sponsors that. We could have that, you know, a couple times throughout the year, and then educating people on gun violence. I definitely believe that if more if definitely youth and even adults, if they feel more a part of the community, then they become more comfortable with the community and less likely to harm the community. We've had a couple of things throughout the summer at Veterans Memorial Park where it just provided an atmosphere of public safety and the fire department and the community getting together, having conversations, and that makes people feel a little bit more welcome into the city and more apt to not commit crime, and then also be on the lookout kind of with the programs that we have currently.
Thank you. The next question, what are your ideas to increase city revenues and/or decrease city expenses? And for this question, we'll start with Ms. Dent Bradley.
Yes, I know that there have been several initiatives that the city council has been working on increasing the revenue in the city, and it seems to be going in the right direction with including developing or at least working with developers to create opportunities for more taxpayers. So now, you know, having some of the buildings that they've built in the city has increased the population, and that increases the amount of revenue for the city. I think that has been great. Also seeking opportunities to receive grants and opportunities for, so like with the transportation department, receiving federal grants to help build up parts of the city and the roadways to make it more so that people can travel through the city a little bit better. And then also increasing the number of businesses that come into the empty space.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
Could you please repeat the question?
Sure. What are your ideas to increase city revenues and/or decrease city expenses?
Yes, thank you. I agree that because Richfield is such of a small area, square mileage, we need to be more proactive on focusing on the empty spaces that we have in some places such as the Hub and all along 66th Street, you know, different small businesses that are out, and different land areas that we could be filling that with development of social, or of small businesses to bring that tax revenues in. And in that way, that would increase the revenue and also decrease the expenses as far as what to do with that land. Why is it sitting empty? Who owns it? And are they keeping up with their taxes that they're doing and things like that? If they do increase that, then that would be able to decrease the expenses.
Thank you. Ms. Supple?
Thank you. I think there's 4 parts to this. One has already been mentioned with broadening the tax base and the economic development. Another one was also mentioned of looking for grants and partnerships with nonprofits and other levels of government. But 2 that haven't come up have to do, one has to do with strategic planning and efficiencies. One of the strategic planning goals is to have operational excellence. And so looking at things like making sure that we have efficient technology so that our systems are working correctly and that we're not getting bogged down in old inefficient systems. And so a number of those things are being looked at by the staff to make sure that we're using the resources we have in the best possible way. And so that is part of the strategic plan focus going forward, is to have that operational excellence in place. The 4th thing is there's been discussion of whether or not to use a local option sales tax. And the way that that would work is you have to go through the legislature to get permission, and then the citizenry would vote on it. So, okay, we'll talk more about that later.
Okay, thank you. The next question, The City Council's chief responsibility is to set strategies for the city. What strategic initiatives would you push for? For this question, we'll start with Ms. Supple.
So we just went through the strategic planning process with the city, and one of the things in community development that I personally was pushing for was the economic development piece. So along with the affordable housing, there's also that economic development piece in the community development. We also talked about that we need to look through our whole structure and look at equity to make sure that we're delivering all our services in an equitable way. And that goes across everything from racial equity to making sure people in the disability community have equal opportunities, to also make sure we look at economic equity and those types of things. We also have priorities as far as things like, I think climate change is a huge thing we have to look forward to as well. And I did mention earlier that we were talking about that operational excellence. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dent Bradley?
Yes, I would continue to push for equity in all parts of the city. On the Transportation Commission, I have pushed for that when it comes to not only people that are driving or taking the bus, but also biking and walking around the city. So, and also with people with disabilities. So making sure that the city is operational for all throughout the city. I also would look at equity when it comes to, staffing and programs. I know that currently the city is low on staff, which is across the country that's going on right now. But as they look to hire, new people that are in charge of operational departments, just ensuring that they have an equitable view and also different plans that would help the city move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
Yes, along with the strategic planning from the city, again, I can't really emphasize enough that the citizens of this city really need to be involved. There's a lot of great commissions that the city has openings for, and the city working together with these commissions, those are the eyes and the ears of the citizens of the city. Working with the city council and, things like that, they get ideas because there may be different ideas from one end of the city to the other. Even though we are a small community, there may be different issues that, for planning purposes, that are different than the east side versus way on the west side, or the north and the south, those types of things. So if you get more citizens involved, and there's a reason for them to want to be involved, give them an incentives to want to be involved. There's a lot of apathy going on and that's just all over, not just in Richfield, but there is all over. So if you keep them engaged somehow, it makes them really want to be here.
Thank you. Next question. Give examples of how you have been able to work productively with those who do not share your opinions. For this question, we'll start with Ms. Christensen.
With the diversity in the city that we have, and even in your own neighborhoods, it's easy to agree to disagree. And that's what you really need to do. You need to really listen to different views. That doesn't mean you agree with them. That doesn't mean you need to argue with them or bring things up that would hurt your relationship with those people. And even working with them, you might get ideas that you might not have thought of. You really need to listen to different people, see their views, see where they're coming from, see if there's any backstories on this, see if there's any the reasons why they feel the way they do. Really kind of question them and ask, why do you feel that way? Not just, well, you're different than me, so I can't be friends with you, or I can't be neighbors, we won't talk, or, even coworkers or other people that you may not know from other areas of the city. If that's their opinion, they're free to have that opinion to themselves, but sometimes you really kind of need to know why. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Supple?
I think the best example would be when I was one of the contract negotiators for the teachers union, because the school district administration and the teachers would come in with different interests, and you have to look at all of the interests that are there. And one of the key strategies we used is we would start with, what do we agree on? So that you're focusing on what's best for the community, or for the schools in this case. Focus on what you are agreeing on, and then you work through the interests in a respectful manner. And it's really important to be listening to what the other person is saying so that you understand what their intent is, rather than like thinking ahead to figure out what you're going to say next to make your own point. So I think it's really important to work together to do that. And I've noticed in the past that sometimes you might disagree with somebody on one issue, but later on you're working together with them on a second issue. So it's important to make sure that you don't get into like a personal battle and to stick to the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dent Bradley?
Yes, thank you. I've worked on a lot of different committees, and one that I've worked on has to do with equity, diversity, and inclusion. And on that committee, it takes me, gathering different people, different perspectives from different people, because different people are experts in different areas. So one person, might be an expert on mental health, and someone else is an expert on COVID protocols or other things like that. And just pulling people together, hearing their perspective. If they have data on that perspective, then taking that into consideration, or if they have other people that I can talk to give their opinion about whatever the subject is that we're talking about, it helps inform me on the decision to make further down the road. And definitely, if there's different experts on different areas, then they're able to give me a perspective that I might not have had, and it helps with the relationship going forward.
Thank you. The next question, suppose a new resolution is on the agenda for next week. It's asking for some money for a new service for the citizens. How do you decide which way to vote? And for this question, we'll start with Ms. Dent Bradley.
Yes, if there's money for a new service on the docket for next week, I definitely would take into consideration what other things are being proposed for the budget. Take a look at the budget, see where it would fall within that. If it falls within a particular department, checking to see how far along they've spent their budget, or if they need new money allocated to them. And I would definitely do that, do some of that research, reach out to staff before the next meeting in order to make an informed decision on how much should be allocated towards it. So they may be requesting, $20,000, but then the budget says that they've spent everything up except for $10,000 for that year. So then going back to them and negotiating a different price point. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
Yes, along with the budget issues, the need to reach out to the staff to see what their budget is, first of all, is important. And if they can afford it, ask what kind of services from who you're getting the request from. Kind of dig into more of the detailed issues of these services. Can you do the services totally, completely? Can part of the services be done now and part of the services be budgeted in for a future date? And if you can't do the budget right now at this point, what needs to be done so they can plan in the future? It depends on the services. It really depends on who's all involved, how many people are involved, what they're asking for. Can there be alternatives to their types of services that they need?
Thank you. Ms. Supple?
So I think the easy answer would be you always need to do your homework and read the information and ask questions ahead of time so that staff has chance to get you the information. There's two ways that proposals like this come forward. One is part of the broad overall budget, and I think you need to look at the competing priorities and think through what all those budgeting decisions are and what services are critical and what our priorities are. But then sometimes there are other opportunities, like when the federal ARPA funds came, we had to say, okay, this is one-time money. what's the best way that we can use this, because there's not going to be long-term sustainability. And so again, it was like having a mini budget session. And so you need to think about what are the long-term impacts. Is it one-time money? Is it something that's going to have ongoing expenses afterwards? And basically just do your homework and ask the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now moving to questions from the audience. What are the top challenges facing Richfield residents now and in the next few years? For this question, we'll start with Ms. Christensen.
I think probably the top three issues that we're all facing, no matter what areas of the city you live in, no matter your age group, your economic situation, the housing is one of the issues. Can you stay in your home? Is it affordable for you to stay in your home? If you can't stay in your home but you want to stay in the community, where do you want to live? Where can you live? The other is the rising crime, and that's just not historically towards Richfield directly. It's rising crime all over, and working with citizens and working with people that can help you along with that, with the police department and different agencies through the city that might be able to help. And also the growth and the potential growth of small businesses. How can we economically bring small businesses, small to mid-sized businesses in to the city to help with sustainability of economics? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Supple?
I think that housing has been and continues to be one of the big challenges to make sure that it's affordable and that it's quality housing and that everybody has options available to them. And we've been working on a number of policies to work on that. Woodlawn Terrace is a manufactured home community here in Richfield that worked together to form a cooperative so that they could buy the park from the previous owners, and it allowed them to keep their affordability and keep their homes, but we worked in partnership with the city to help get them onto their utilities and water and sewer and things like that. So housing is a huge thing. Economics, being able to have a living wage job and a job that provides dignity, that's important. And finally, I think we really need to support our children. They've been through a lot of stress with the pandemic and all the things going on, and so we need to work together and wrap around our kids as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dent Bradley?
Yes, I definitely think that inflation is one of the top challenges for the next few years, especially as with the rising cost of groceries and gas and even transportation. It increases in like the insurance companies are increasing their prices and things like that, and it's making it. Then it trickles into like housing, because definitely housing is a major issue for Richfield and a major challenge to tackle, because as people age in their homes, they may not be able to sustain the homes and build upon them or fix, water leaks and other things like that. And so then the housing stock is aging more quickly. And then also the economics, with like living wages and businesses, bringing more businesses into the city and sustaining them, and so that we can get more of a taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, do you support or oppose a local sales tax in Richfield? And we'll start with Ms. Dent Bradley.
I would definitely have to see, I guess, how much that tax would be, and then how much it would bring to the city, and in what ways would it influence, I guess, the economics of the city. I would want to know, because I know like we have, varying house types or varying households that make varying amounts throughout the city. So I want to see the percentage of that to know if we have more people that are, for a family of four making $40,000 or less, and things like that, and what the economic levels are the city to be able to afford another tax on their income. And so I would want to see a little bit more information and the results of that but I would lean towards if it's beneficial for in the best interest of the city, then I would be for the local tax. But I would want to know what the balance is.
Thank you. Ms. Supple?
So the idea of the local option sales tax came up because as we were looking at our budgets and what we could afford with the means we have, we've been taking care of our infrastructure as far as like the sewers and the roads and the water systems. But we have a huge backlog of needs in the recreational system. Things like paying to replace the building that's 50 years old at Woodlake Nature Center, the pool that's 60 years old that needs to be replaced, park buildings that are aging, and maybe we could look at like how to update the community center. How do we come up with event space? We don't have the means to do that in our budget. So one of the ideas that came up is using that local option sales tax, and it would be a small amount on each purchase. It would not affect things like clothing and food, but it would be a regional way to help pay for some of the regional things, because not everybody who comes to Woodlake Nature Center is from the city of Richfield, so the people that are coming here to shop would also be able to help pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
The local option sales tax is most likely a good thing if it's needed for certain services to improve the city where we live. And I also believe that if people are made aware of that, what's happening, if they are upfront about telling you exactly, because most people would say, well, what's that tax going for? If you knew what your tax money was going for, the sales tax, you probably wouldn't disagree with what's going on. If you use the services here in the city, and if there's things that could be improved in your area, that you would be able to use it to your benefit. So yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dent Bradley? Oh, I'm sorry. We're moving on to the next question. What are some of your unique talents that will help your success serving on the city council? And for this, we'll start with Ms. Dent Bradley.
Some of my unique talents include, I guess, being in community and learning. Well, I've learned, how to work with others, and I can bring others to the table. And then also I work well with others from different sectors of the community, whether it's in education or public safety and other areas. That would help. It definitely would help with working with all the commissions that we have in the city, because as they continue with their relationship with the city council members and bring ideas to us, then that would help with the operation of the city a little bit better and a little bit more. But definitely my background with working with people in the union movement and with other volunteers and other community members, being together like that's definitely one of my unique talents.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
Yes, my experiences working with individual people groups stem from union activity, through work, through different school and other social activities that I've been involved in. My past guardian ad litem experience, working with the courts, working with a very diverse amount of people, communicating with individuals and being able to listen to what they have to say and not forming opinions in general without taking everybody's opinions into account. It also helps to be able to formulate different ideas from those individuals and possibly work towards, if you can't help a person out, finding the resource where you can find the answers to individuals. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Supple?
I would say that a lot of my talents have been developed over years of lived experience and leadership. And when I say leadership, it's not like an autocratic, like I'm going to dictate what everybody should do. It's empowering other people. It's listening to other people. It's finding solutions. It's reaching out. And I'm very talented at bringing groups together. I'm very talented at being open to diverse opinions. So I think that comes from teaching and learning from so many kids and those deep connections with the children. So I would say community building, talent development, communication, all of those things are strengths of mine. And I'm just having a lot of lived experience in a lot of different organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. We're getting close to the end of our time, so we'll go to closing statements. You'll have 2 minutes for your closing statement, and we will start with Ms. Supple.
Once again, thank you all for being here, and to the Richfield League of Women Voters for hosting this event. Richfield has a strong legacy of working together as a community. I believe that we can continue that tradition as we come together to meet any challenges that may lie ahead and dream of our shared future where everyone can thrive. As a community, we will continue to support our children and work on issues like affordable, accessible housing, transportation options, sustainability, and making sure quality services are delivered equitably. I firmly believe that we also need to turn our attention to economic development that is inclusive and supporting our local small businesses. They are integral to helping Richfield thrive. We also need to invest in our green spaces, our recreational facilities, and sustainability in our community, just as past generations planned ahead for us. My work as a teacher, a union leader, and a council member provided valuable experience that will help me hit the ground running as mayor, but I can't do it alone. I need your help as we plan for and build the future. You can find out more at marysupple.com or reach out to me at neighborsforsupple@gmail.com. I respectfully ask for your vote to be Richfield's next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dent Bradley?
Yes, thank you. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters Richfield for holding this forum and having this opportunity to speak to everyone about my run for candidacy for Richfield City Council. I definitely know that I will bring a lot of my lived experience and background to the City Council, and I will help promote social and economic justice and issues and listen to the issues that impact the community. I will bring a fresh new perspective and approach to discussions involving the city, because I am not only trained to see it through a legal lens, but can also see the issue from different perspectives and from different experiences and atmospheres that I have been a part of throughout my life. I have a unique skill of being able to relate to a lot of people and can balance the impact that certain decisions will have on their lives. I will work with others to help identify hurdles that are not currently working to better the lives of the people in the city of Richfield, and will work on things that are hindering their reversal by collecting ideas and suggestions from the community and providing advice on how to move forward on those issues to the Richfield City and Richfield City staff and City Council. So I definitely respectfully ask for your vote up to now in November for Richfield City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen?
Yes, thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this forum today, and for the citizens that have come out and the citizens that are taking the time to watching this on air. I also feel that the city of Richfield can come together as a small community. You've heard the phrase, one Minnesota, that type of thing, one Richfield. Richfield Strong has been another one that has been floating around for a while since we've had issues in the city. But also, more importantly, it's a matter of getting the citizens together and working with the city and for affordable housing for all, not just for some, but affordable housing, and also sustainability in our parks and our programs to bring the families here to stay in the city. Also, the historic preservation in this 21st century. Where have we been? Where are we going? And how do we continue that, working with different groups? And in that way, we'll be able to come together to do those types of things. Working with the crime in the city, no matter what kind of crime it is, people think crime, guns, et cetera. But there's also a lot of smaller type crime issues that you need to work with. And working with your neighbors, working with the community, the different services we have here with the police department, and all the other individuals that are there. Environmental concerns, our parks and our trails that are so needed in this city. People need an out. People need to have a way to function and to be able to let things go sometimes from the stresses of life. And if we keep up with the different parks and trails in the area, then that way they might be able to do those types of things. These are just some of the issues that face us every day, and we need to be together to working all this. Your opinions matter, and I respectfully request your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all the candidates. Let's give them a round of applause.
And I just want to speak on behalf of the Richfield League of Women Voters again. Thank you. It really does mean a lot for you to take the time to come here and talk to us. And I just want to say, as a veteran of the City Council for 16 years back in the ancient days, but I just remember all politics is local. And I'm sitting here thinking about our legislative, and there are great topics about gun control and stuff. But when there's a barking dog in a neighborhood, then that's when and they know where you live. So this is a hard job, and I really appreciate you putting yourself out there for that. And then this is an important job. And again, thank you all for coming. This really means a lot. And be sure there will be on YouTube. It will be on channel 16. And so again, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.